When Moses was born, he knew he would die, which many people would think is worse than the night itself. From the moment he took his first breath, he lived with the weight of the Pharaoh's hatred for his people, the Hebrews. In Egypt, which was filled with fear and oppression, the royal decree ordered the killing of all Hebrew babies who were male. In the middle of all this sadness, the bravery of a mother stood out as a sign of hope. The inquisitors were always following her around, so she kept her son hidden from them for 3 long months. Every laugh and cry that was held back wasn't just an act of quiet. They were statements of defiance. In this case, the love of a mother was just as strong as any stone wall. In the end, though, reality put a terrible end to this makeshift hiding place. People were pulled between pain and hope when they decided to put Moses in a basket and throw him into the unknown waters of the Nile. It was a strange turn of events when the Pharaoh's daughter found the basket. She was the heir to the man who had ordered Moses' death. She felt sorry for the baby and chose to not only save him, but also adopt him as her own. How could Moses have grown up in the palace, which was both fancy and dangerous, when he knew that he came from a poor family and was being mistreated? He lived a showy life of wealth and study while living with the Egyptians, but the truth about who he was never changed. It took him a while to learn how to balance his background with the reality he was forced to live in. As he watched his people being abused, he became very angry and did something violent that would change his life forever. Why would a man risk everything he knows to do what's right? Moses couldn't ignore how much his people were hurting, so he killed an Egyptian who was abusing a Hebrew without thinking. This action not only went against his fate, but it also made him realize how important his task really was. He ran away to Midian because he knew he couldn't go back to the palace. That's where his road to redemption and leadership really started. Even though he was away from the palace in Midian, Moses found new tasks and chances to shape his character. By stepping in to protect women from abusive farmers at the well, he showed that he was still committed to justice, which made him not only a wanted criminal, but also a real rising leader. Before we go any further with this amazing story, please like this video and subscribe to our channel if Moses' journey has moved you, so you can read more stories that make you feel better and teach you important lessons. Also, please leave a super thanks if you'd like to help this work. We can keep telling more Bible stories and spreading this message of faith and hope thanks to your gift. Thank you very much for your help. Still going, Moses felt a peace that he hadn't felt in a long time as he helped Jethro's daughters get water for their flocks. As a thread of hope was stitched into Midian's empty horizon, the clouds of his past seemed to fade. When Jethro, the priest of Midian, and the father of the women Moses was helping, heard what had happened, he sent Moses to his home right away. Jethro's kindness and willingness to help were like a welcome haven in the desert of doubt that Moses was going through. Moses went to Jethro's house to find safety and a chance to be saved. There, he learned about the people of Midian and their customs. He learned a lot from the wise Jethro and made friends along the way. His family made him feel like he was one of them, which was something he had been missing for a long time. Surprisingly, Jethro asked Moses to marry his daughter Zipporah. Zipporah, a woman with a strong will and a kind heart, let Moses stay with her even though he was with shadows. Moses began to build a life in Midian, away from the trouble in Egypt, with Zipporah by his side. Getting married was the start of his new life and style. He took care of the flocks with the help of Jethro. His life was simple and peaceful, very different from his time in the palace. Every day, Moses felt more accepted and part of the group. He was becoming more like the person he was meant to be, and less like the person he had been. No longer seen as a sign of weakness, his trip to Midian was seen as an important step on his journey. He learned about the desert's storms and calms over the course of many years. Each day was spent grazing, which was a simple, rural task that kept him away from the drama of Egypt. But an average day changed when, while taking the flocks through the desert, Moses chose to take them to Mount Horeb, which was revered and feared by the people who lived there because of scary stories about it. The only sounds in the desert were the feet of horses and the odd bleating of sheep. Thoughts of his life and what he had left behind took his attention away from a strange light in the distance. A small, twisting bush was on fire, but it wasn't a normal fire. The flames went around the plant, but didn't burn it. He cautiously walked up to the thing that seemed to be drawing him to it by an unseen force. Then he heard his name being called out by a strong, demanding voice coming from inside the fires. Moses answered, but he was shaking. The voice told him that it was the God of his fathers. The ground in front of the bush that was on fire became holy, and Moses took off his shoes out of respect and fear. In the desert, God showed Moses how his people were suffering in Egypt and told him that he would free them. It was too much for him to handle the task, but God told Moses that he would be with him and promised him signs and words. Besides that, he made it clear to Moses that his job was to free his people from slavery. Moses was still having trouble with the weight of this divine job when the burning bush appeared and changed him. As Moses went back to the camp, he knew he was no longer alone and was ready to face whatever came his way because God had promised him that he would be safe. This event on Mount Horeb was not only a divine meeting, but also a calling that changed who he was and what his fate was. Moses felt a lot better when he chose Aaron to be his spokesperson. He would be in charge of speaking the holy commands, and Moses would be in charge of showing the people that what he said was true through wonders. This partnership gave Moses new energy. He felt stronger and less alone in his goal. With these new duties made clear and supported by signs from heaven, he felt ready to take on the tasks that lay ahead with renewed determination. Moses turned his attention back to Egypt, where his trip had started. He was ready to take on his role as a liberator. He was now going back to the place where he grew up with his wife Zipporah and their sons. It was also the place where his fate would be realized. With the kind of determination that can only come from faith, Moses set out for Egypt. He knew there would be problems, but he also knew that God had given him promises to keep. As they made their way back, Moses stopped to think and pray. This gave him a chance to think about the amazing things he had seen and how hard the job he had been given was. During these times of thought, something scary happened that put his faith to the test. One night there was a dark threat over the camp. It brought a disease that almost killed Moses. At that very important moment, Zipporah understood that Moses' health was in danger because they had not followed one of God's rules and had not circumcised their younger son. Zipporah was determined and knew the rules of her faith very well. She took the lead and did the process of circumcision, which not only saved Moses' life, but also showed her dedication to following God's rules. This event was a strong warning that following God was more than just believing in him. It also meant doing what he said. When Zipporah did something brave and the threat went away right away, it gave Moses strength and made him clear on his goal. He was ready for anything that came next more than ever. With his family by his side and his faith stronger, Moses crossed the border into Egypt, determined to do what God had told him to do. His time in the desert made him more determined to follow all of God's rules and go through any hardship knowing that God was with him. When Moses got to Egypt, he was ready to fight the people who were keeping his people as slaves. He got ready for the important meeting with the Israelite elders with Aaron by his side. This meeting was very important because it was the first step toward getting the leaders and the people to work together for freedom. God had shown Aaron and Moses the vision of freedom in a burning bush. Aaron told Moses about the holy experiences they had both had. For his part, Moses showed the amazing signs that God had given him. He threw his staff to the ground, turned it into a snake, and then back to its original shape. The leaders were amazed as the leprous hand was miraculously healed in front of them. As the elders watched these amazing events, they were filled with new faith and hope. They believed that Moses and Aaron's mission was real and promised to help them. With the elders' blessing and help, Moses was even more sure of what he was doing. Moses felt stronger after being accepted by the leaders and getting clear support from his group. He then got ready for the next step, which was to face the king. Every step he took in Egypt brought him closer to his fight with the imperial power. He was armed not only with divine commands, but also with the faith of a people who could finally see the light of freedom. As soon as they walked into the throne room, they noticed how grand and fancy the Egyptian palace was. It was very different from the simple mission that Moses and Aaron were on from God. The Pharaoh, who was sitting on his chair and surrounded by his advisors and guards, gave off an air of unquestioned power. When God told Aaron, "Let my people go, so that they may celebrate a festival to me in the wilderness," the air was tense. Aaron took a deep breath that showed how serious the situation was. The Pharaoh's answer was full of pride and disdain. "Who is the Lord that I should do what he says and let Israel go? I don't know the Lord, and I won't let Israel go," he said, and the sound of his words could be heard through the hall's fancy walls. These words hit Moses and Aaron like a cold blast, but they kept coming out, making it clear what would happen if they didn't follow God's instructions. But Pharaoh's heart became even harder, so he ignored their pleas and accused them of stirring up trouble among the Israelites, saying that they were just trying to get out of working. As a punishment, he told them to work in even worse conditions than they were in before. But now they had to gather their own straw to make bricks while still meeting their daily goal. Moses and Aaron were devastated when they left the palace. They carried the weight of their failure and the growing oppression of their people on their shoulders. When they went back to the Israelites, they were met with angry looks and claims that they had made their lives even worse. The Israelites were angry and said, "May the Lord look upon you and judge you, for you made us filthy in the eyes of Pharaoh and his servants by giving them swords to kill us." Moses was deeply moved by what was said. He turned to God for help and cried out, "Lord, why have you done this to these people? Why did you send me?" As Moses looked for answers, he had to put his faith to the test by thinking about the way God had told him to take. God's answer did not come right away, so Moses had time to think and wait. Even though he had questions and fears, his belief that he was on a mission made him more determined to keep going. Even though the goal of freedom seemed to be full of more problems now, he knew he had to go ahead with it. With Aaron by his side and the signs from God, Moses got ready to face more trouble. He was aware that the fight for the freedom of his people had just started, but he was set on following God's plan, even though it would be hard. God put Moses to the test when he told him that Egypt would suffer a lot of bad things because the king would not give in. In the first of these disasters, the Nile water turned into blood, a dramatic sign that meant death and destruction, but didn't change the Pharaoh's mind. The plagues that came after were worse and worse. There were frogs, lice, wildflies, boils, hail, locusts, and darkness that was so thick it could be felt. All of these disasters showed how powerful God was and called into question the authority of the Egyptian gods. But Pharaoh's heart was still set on destroying them. Finally, the last and worst plague was announced. All of Egypt's firstborn children would die. This terrible threat was going to be the last blow Moses needed to free his people. In order to be ready for this dark night, Moses told the Israelites to mark their doors with the blood of a lamb that had been killed. This would keep the angel of death from getting in. The last plague caused so much grief that it spread through every Egyptian home, finally getting the king to give up. He told Moses and Aaron to leave right away with their people when he called them. Moses led the Israelites out of Egypt under the pale light of the moon. This was the start of their trip to the freedom that had been promised. Israel's freedom wasn't just a way for them to get away. It was also a sign of God's power and the unchangeable fate of his chosen people. In the days leading up to the night of freedom, Moses told his people to get ready to leave. He told them to eat quickly because it was the Lord's Passover. When the Israelite families got together in their homes, they did what they were told and marked their doors with the blood of the lamb. They then ate the holy meal with their shoes on and their staffs in their hands, ready to leave at any time. There was a palpable mix of stress and deep trust in the air. Moses and his family also saw the blood marks that sealed the door to his home. These marks were a strong reminder of the promise God made with his people. During that night of prayer, every beating showed the worry and hope of a people who were about to be saved. Then, in the middle of the night, Egypt heard a desperate cry. The sound was like an entire kingdom was sad. Every Egyptian home had a dead family member, even the Pharaoh's son. The king was so sad about this huge loss that he called for Moses and Aaron and told them to take the Israelites and leave Egypt. He told her, "Go out and serve your God, as you said," which made her sound like she was giving up. Once Moses finally got permission, he moved quickly to get the people ready. The Israelites, who were now free, quickly left Egypt. They were filled with people who were excited about their newfound freedom, but their freedom would be put to the test almost right away. Soon, news came that the Pharaoh had changed his mind, feeling both sorry and angry, and had sent his army to catch the Israelites again. People became scared when they heard the sound of Egyptian chariots far off in the distance. Being stuck between the never-ending desert and the huge Red Sea made things look very bad. As Moses stood over this seemingly overwhelming problem, he cried out to God for help while raising his staff. He told the people, "Do not be afraid. Stand still and see the salvation of the Lord. He will save you today." This was meant to calm and encourage them. Then Moses, whose faith was unwavering, put out his hand over the sea. Suddenly, a strong east wind blew across the water, dividing the two walls of water and making a way of dry land. After seeing the miracle, the Israelites were inspired to cross the sea. Each step they took made them stronger in their faith and drive. But Pharaoh, who was very angry and hopeless, told his army to follow the Israelites along the path that had magically appeared. The Israelites got to the other side at the same time that the Egyptians started to cross the water. As they ran, the Egyptian army was closing in quickly. Moses raised his staff again, and as he did, the wind stopped and the water surrounded the Egyptians, swallowing them whole. On the other side, the Israelites watched in awe and respect as the people who were after them were killed. The people were filled with relief and thanks as soon as the threat was gone. The women, led by Moses' sister Miriam, played tambourines and danced to mark the start of the celebration of the great freedom. Crossing the Red Sea was more than just a way to get away from slavery. It was also a spiritual renewal and a confirmation that Israel was God's chosen people. The trip to the Promised Land had only just started, but now there was a strong sense that God was with them. Moses felt stronger than ever in his role as leader of a people that was directly protected by God. He knew that God would lead and protect his people through all of their problems, even though they were hard times ahead. So Moses kept leading Israel toward the future God had promised them. He had new faith and a stronger spirit after seeing God's power. The shores of the Red Sea became a real outdoor refuge after the miracle of the crossing and the win over the Egyptian army. Songs and praise filled the air, joining heaven and earth in a show of prayer and thanksgiving. As the people of Israel gathered in that holy place, they honored not only their physical freedom, but also their spiritual rebirth. They strengthened their relationship with the powerful God who had saved them. But the initial happiness quickly faded as we faced the hard reality of the desert, a cruel place that put our newfound freedom to the test right away. As we got farther away from Egypt's food, things started to go wrong. That's when the first reports from the people came in. Some people mourned, "We wish we had died by the hand of the Lord in Egypt." They missed the good times of slavery when there was plenty of food even though they were being abused. The whispering turned into a poison that spread and hurt their faith, which had been boosted by the amazing events they had seen. When I felt like giving up, I cried out to God for help, and in answer, He gave me a surprise promise. "Look, I'm going to rain bread down from heaven on you." This promise came true in the form of manna, a fine, long-lasting substance that fell with the dew in the morning and filled the ground around the camp. Many people didn't know about manna at first, but it quickly became a daily source of food. I told the people that it was bread from God. Even with this amazing help, thirst quickly became the next big problem. At Rephidim, the lack of water made people even more hopeless, and they started to worry about more than just food and water. For the second time, I begged God to do something amazing. I was told to use the stick that I had used to hit the water in the Nile. I did what I was told and hit a certain rock in Jorep. Fresh, clear water poured out, quenching everyone's thirst. With this surprise, we were reminded that God is still with us, even when things are bad. Every wonder and supply in the desert made our faith stronger and helped us remember how much we depend on God. Amalek's attack, on the other hand, really put our faith to the test. I told Joshua to lead our men into war because of this danger, while Aaron, and I climbed a nearby mountain. There, I put my hands up to heaven as a sign of prayer and reliance. The battle in the valley was like the mental fight we were in. While my hands were raised, Israel won, but when I dropped them, Amalek took the lead. When Aaron and saw this, they helped me hold my hands up until sunset, which made sure we would win. After the battle, I built an altar called "The Lord is my banner" to show that our success in every fight rests on God being with us. This event marked a turning point in our trip and helped us remember that our problems were not just physical. I heard good news that made my heart glad as we walked through the desert. My father-in-law Jethro was coming to meet us with my 2 boys, my wife Zipporah and me. When Jethro came back, he brought my family back with him and some good advice that would change how I led our people. That day, I got ready to give Jethro all the treats a priest from Midian deserves. His appearance with us was a reason to celebrate and a time to think deeply about leadership and how to run a group of people that God picked. After a nice visit with my family, I showed my father-in-law Jethro around the camp and told him about all the amazing things God had done since we left Egypt. I showed him how manna fell from the sky and water sprang from rocks, providing food and water for our people in the desert. During his visit, Jethro kept a close eye on me as I worked from dawn until dusk to settle disagreements and teach the people God's rules. When Jethro saw how tired I was and how useless the system was, he came up to me with a worried face and gave me advice that would completely change the way our government works. His first words were, "What you are doing is not good. It will put a lot of stress on both me and the people. You are not strong enough to do the job by yourself." Because of what he said, I chose to follow his good advice. I began to choose honest men from all the groups the next day when I had a clear head. With their fear of God and dislike of dishonest gain, these men were put in charge of groups of 1,110 people. They took care of small problems, and I was given the more difficult cases. This decentralized method worked well, made my life easier, and gave me more time to focus on more important tasks and teach the divine rules. We planned a sacrifice to God to celebrate the new command system because we were thankful for Jethro's advice. And Jethro, Aaron, and the rulers of Israel took part in a holy meal that sealed our respect and thanks for each other. As we said goodbye, our hearts were heavy, but the help we had received made us feel better. We set out on our way back to Midian. After the new government was set up, I had more time to pray and make plans for the future. Midi thought about what Jethro had taught him and realized that a good leader not only does everything themselves, but also gives others the power to lead with them. We learned this lesson, which was very important to our trip, which led us to the base of Mount Sinai. Our spiritual journey took a new turn when we got to Sinai. I was called to climb the mountain to have a direct experience with God because I could feel God's presence more strongly. In the 3rd month after I left Egypt, I got the people ready for this holy event, which marked the beginning of a time of cleaning and holiness. They were told they would die if they did certain things or went near the mountain. While thunder and lightning were going off and the sound of a horn could be heard, I climbed the mountain through a thick cloud. God spoke at the top and told us the rules that would make up our agreement. These rules, including the 10 Commandments, were written on stone tablets. I showed them to the people, and they swore to do everything the Lord told them to do. In the days that followed, the mountain kept giving people new information. God told Moses how to build the tent, which would be a physical reminder of his presence with us. There were instructions on how to use the altar, dress like a priest, and perform the sacrifices. Everything was meant to bring us closer to God. But during one of those long stays on the mountain, when they were getting the last details of the law, there was a disturbance in the camp. The scene I saw when I got down was full of idols. A golden calf was the center of the dance. I broke the bond by destroying the tablets of the law because I was angry and sad that people had forgotten about the wonders that God had done. After destroying the idol and cleaning the people of their sin, I went back to the mountain with a sad heart to pray for them. I spent 40 days and nights in deep connection, where I not only received the rules, but also begged God to forgive the people. Even though God's answer was harsh, it came with a promise of new life and hope. With the new tablets of the law in my hands, I went down to renew the bond and make sure everyone knew how important our promise to the Lord was. We are even more determined than before to stay on the divine path, no matter how hard things get. God spared the people from total destruction after the terrible events of the golden calf because he was fair and merciful. However, the people still had to deal with the effects of their actions. I will blot out of my book anyone who has sinned against me, the Lord said, and a plague hit the people as a punishment for the terrible wrongdoing. This event was a dark turning point in our journey. It kept reminding us of how easily the human heart wanders and how important it is to have strong guidance and stay alert to the calls of idolatry. Even though the tablets of the law and the covenant were made again, the memory of the golden calf lived on as a reminder of how dangerous it is to break God's rules and how important it is to always do what he says. The people in the community were still shocked when they felt sad and guilty. Being Moses, I felt like I had a huge duty because I knew that we had to fix the broken covenant in order to repair trust between God and Israel. God told me to cut 2 more stone tablets that looked like the first ones and to go back up Mount Sinai for a serious and healing meeting. In the quiet of the early morning, before dawn, I made the new tablets and started the climb by myself, bringing the weight of the stones and the hope for a fresh start. Once I got to the top, I put the tablets in front of me. There was a deep peace in the air, as if nature were waiting for the holy law to be written again. God came down in a cloud and called out his name. He then walked in front of me and showed me who he was. Merciful, gentle, slow to anger, full of kindness and truth, merciful for thousands of years, forgiving sin, transgression, and wickedness. Each word echoed with strength and beauty, and the air was filled with a holy presence that was almost tangible. In the face of this beautiful display, I used the fact that the divine presence was close to pray for the people and ask that his presence stay with us even though we are imperfect. As a response, God promised renewal and wonders. He also said he would wipe out the nations that came before us and set up a huge area, just like he had told our ancestors he would. But along with these promises, there were strong warnings against worshipping false gods and clear orders not to make deals with the people who lived in the promised land. God wrote the 10 Commandments again on the tablets he had prepared during this meeting at Sinai. Renewing the bond was both a symbolic and a physical act that showed God was still willing to lead and shape his people, even though Israel had done wrong. I spent 40 days and 40 nights on the mountain. When I finally came down, my face was glowing from my meeting with God. The people were scared at first, but I quickly told them that this brightness meant that God was there. When I spoke to them, I put a veil over my face. I only took it off when I went into the tent to talk to God and when I told the people what He told me to do. This time on Sinai was a new part of our trip. It was the rewritten tablets of the Ten Commandments and the extra directions that kept us together as a society that followed God by obeying Him and having a deep knowledge of His love, justice, and mercy. Then we started to build the tent, which would remind us that God was still with us. The building was done by the whole community as a single effort that showed our faith and devotion to God. As soon as the tent was finished, the light of the Lord filled the space, showing that He was there and protecting them. As the years went by in the desert, I, Moses, felt the weight and knowledge of having served God all my life. I spent my days teaching people God's rules, running our community, and getting ready to go to the Promised Land. In my last days, when I knew I wouldn't be able to go to the Promised Land, I got Joshua ready to lead the people in taking it over. I had to climb Mount Nebo as my last job. From there, God showed me how big the Promised Land was. That's where I thanked God for the trip, what I learned, and His kindness. Then, surrounded by the beauty of nature and the peace of God's presence, I died. I left behind a legacy of faith, trust, and persistence that would last for generations and help Israel stay strong. This story of faith and leadership may have touched your heart. Please share this movie with your family and friends to spread the message of hope and rebirth. Tell us what you think or have a question about the story of Moses below. We want to hear your voice and grow with you on this road of faith. Also, don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more stories that teach us important lessons and improve our faith. Thank you for following us to the end of this incredible story. See you in the next video. May God be with you always. Amen.